I'm really grateful that you said yes. And I've been noticing how mindful you've been about your preparation, which is I make up. You as a coach, your clients are so lucky to get that level of integrity, care, attention to detail. So I just wanted to acknowledge that's who I've seen you be, over the last bit as we've been going back and forth in preparation for this.
Thank you, Christy. And I'm honored. It's a privilege. I'm grateful. Yeah,
So
we're here.
We're here. And let's start with your definition of coaching. What is from your book, how do you define it?
Yeah, this is an interesting one. Coaching for me is holding space. Holding space for one to see the potential in themselves or in others or in a situation. And it's really forward looking so that one can take an action, be held accountable and capable. As a coach, I really feel I'm there to reflect options that the leader has so that they can work through it and dissolve. I want to use the word dissolve any dissonance in themselves to move forward.
It's a beautiful definition. Yeah, really beautiful. And so for folks who are listening who may not be coaches or as fluent in like coaching speak, leadership speak, how do you define holding space?
Well, holding space for me is presence. It's presence, and it's being grounded. It's being there without distraction, in the moment, being attuned and receptive, using the whole body as a tool, if you will, to listen, to be observant, to feel kinesthetically what may be surfacing as well in that holding space partnership.
Did you always have those abilities? Was this like one of your superpowers before coaching, that you could like tune in and listen more deeply and kind of get a sense through your intuition what was happening and what wasn't being said?
Wow, Christy, I'm getting goosebumps as you're speaking because you use the word intuition. And as a mentor coach, I'm always, and as a coach, drawing on competency 2.5 of the ICF core competencies. But yes, using my intuition. I've always had it. I just never exposed it. I've never exposed it before coaching, but it was always there. So,
do you remember the moment where you gave yourself permission to reclaim your intuition? I feel like this is an important part of any leader, coach's, human's journey, really.
Wow. I think I'll start with, yes, I would contrast that with a moment when I didn't give my intuition permission. And that came up many, many times in my life, many times. And I knew it was there. I knew that there was a feeling because I'm kinesthetic, so I would feel things. And it happened to me a few times. Like the one most memorable was, well, when I signed an offer letter for a role that was too good to be true. And everything in my head was saying, take it, take it, take it. The money's there, the title's there, everything's there. But then at the moment when I was actually going to commit, I felt this feeling inside of me. And it was a feeling of unease and in my solar plexus, this sensation that I just wasn't familiar with. And I thought, oh, that's strange. But I went with it. And then I realized, oh gosh, what did I just do? Everything that my intuition was telling me at the time that I didn't give permission to arose in moments and events and things that eventually led me to coaching. But yes, now I give myself permission as a coach and I use it 100% of the time.
Would you say that this is one of your favorite coaching skills, intuition?
Yes, yes. Because I think that if I look back in my life at times and many moments when I had suppressed it for so long that it had to emerge.
Mm-hmm.
It had to emerge. And by suppressing that, it was um, like a pendulum, the image of a pendulum. If you keep suppressing that momentum, well, it's going to come full force. There's only so much you can hold it back. So yes, to answer your question, yeah, I use it with my heart.
Yeah. And I do think in our society, many of us have been conditioned to believe that we're not intuitive. And especially in a organizational environment, a corporate environment, we rely so heavily on the data that it's tuned out our intuition. And you said like the kinesthetics, the body awareness. One of the things I've been seeing with my organizational clients is that some of them are bringing it back. It's like we're bringing intuition back. Yes, we're going to rely on the data. Yes, we're going to measure, and we're going to start tapping into what is our inherent birthright, something that we all have. And I'm even training leaders just on intuition, workshops where we're just like revisiting, oh, I have this part of me that's like, maybe I've turned it off since I was a kid because culture, society, we just get all these messages. So I know I'm finding that really inspiring to see organizations investing and turning on intuition. What are some of the trends you're seeing in your organizational clients? Like, what are they tapping into right now or turning back on?
It's a great question. I think there is a pendulum swing again back to the intuitive sciences, neuroplasticity, using data as well as the gut feel.
Mm-hmm.
And in terms of tools, well, I mentioned one, the kinesthetic experience. The second in terms of learning is auditorial, and then the third being visual. But it's almost like a combination of those three. I use it within the realm of helping leaders to really get an understanding of what lights them up. What sensory perception are they using when they're communicating, but also what are they not tapping into? Like this sort of the shadow side of it. That one skill, if overused, may take or overshadow, the remaining skill sets. So there is a assessment. It's Angie MacArthur, her book Collaborative Intelligence.
Okay.
We use that collectively with her permission, of course.
Yeah.
And also, the data side is very important too. I don't want to discount that, but
no, so important.
Whether it's EQI, emotional intelligence, SDI, strength deployment inventory. Like there are many, many tools out there, DISC, Enneagram, but combining the two, I found is where the opportunity lies, at that heart versus mind.
Yes.
Data versus emotion.
Relationship versus task. Role to role versus human to human.
Yes. Human to human.
Yeah.
Human to human.
So
there's a connectivity piece here. Sorry.
There is. That's great. What had you, because you've had a full career before you transitioned into coaching. You've done a lot of really interesting things working for world leading organizations. What was your catalyst that had you transition into this profession?
Yeah, there were three moments of my life that came about in my career: birth of my daughter, death of a loved one, my beloved cousin, and the third was probably my own health scare at the time. So my own awakening, if you will, to how much time do I have left, on this planet, epiphany, if you will. But what triggered it all, I think, and I use that word trigger, is because I was also working in an environment where there was, I would say, I'm going to use this word, toxic leadership that didn't align to my values. Mm-hmm. And that had me question my inner self, who I really was, versus what was being projected onto me in the form of leadership. And that dissonance eventually set me free to do this work.
Wow. Death, birth, health scare, and it sounds like a catalyst to really have you connect to your own values and mission and why am I here at this time?
Absolutely. Yeah, it really was painful, yet the best remedy ever.
Yeah. And so now where you are looking back to that time frame when you were considering like doing coach education and transitioning in your career, what would you tell that guy? What were you looking back where you are now and what was going on for him? What would be the wisdom you'd provide him?
That it's okay. That everything is meant to flow the way it was meant to be. And it was designed that way to help me be in service. That you're going to be in greater service, even mid-magnitude and volume, really drawing on those values and who I really am, that authenticity in the world.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So at this juncture then, what are you seeing inside your organizational clients as it relates to their return on their investment? When they hire you to coach an executive, or if you're bringing in some kind of leadership training, what are some of the things you're seeing that has them call you back and assign you to a new leader or keep working with that leader?
So what I've been told is that there's a high level of trust and safety in the conversations and also learning. So not only as coach am I holding space, but there are tools in my toolbox, models or material that may aid in facilitating the growth for clients. So really, coaching is one aspect, and then you have the learning piece. And I want to use a third, and I've been told it's really about the experience, the experiential, call it growth mindset, but openness to whatever that meeting where that person, wherever they are at in the journey, the leadership journey or the transformation journey or the change that they're experiencing. That's all I have.
Yeah, that's great.
In terms of data.
Yeah. Well, and the other data, is that you get repeat business, and this is something from the consulting end, as I've been talking to different external coaches, executive coaches, consultants. It's like one colleague who for 20 years has been invited back over and over again to the same organization. So we know that there's a return on investment happening because he wouldn't be invited back in, right? So it's like that's a place to look, and and what you just shared. So that's perfect. And
yeah, I was going to say that, I mean, in terms of raw data, there's like NPS and measures of satisfaction, on-time delivery. I mean, there are all these metrics, but the other data points that are not easily captured are qualitative, and that's what happens in the session, and it's very private and confidential. However, the qualitative piece has been, with all humility, is that I get it. I get what they're going through.
Yeah.
So it's hard to put a number on it, but the repeat is definitely an indicator that something's working well here in the chemistry.
Definitely. And you did your studying, and you're also on faculty at Royal Roads. Is that right?
Yes. So as a mentor coach at Royal Roads, I also attended Royal Roads University in British Columbia, in Victoria, BC.
Yeah. I'd love to hear a little bit about the program, whatever you can share. A lot of our community is coactive based, and we are always looking to hear from people from different schools, different modalities to enrich the conversation. So, yeah, what would you share about Royal Roads curriculum, their model, and how it's supported you to grow into the leader and the executive coach you've become?
Oh, wow. I got to say, Royal Roads was an incredible experience. Obviously, this was just before COVID, and we met in person. They have a wonderful group session that takes place in the span of a few days, where leaders from all over get to know each other, and they break down. And the model that they use is called the accelerator model. But what's magical, I think, about it is breaking down barriers, coming together, and having very deep personal conversations in a setting that's facilitated around just that. Is what is it that you need? Then how is it demonstrated? The facilitators, by the way, actually pulled me up in my first session, had me as the coachee, and it was the first ever in front of the entire.
Put you in the hot seat,
audience.
did they? They put you right in the hot seat.
But right in there. It was the best thing, though, because what it did was showcased vulnerability. And I think that coming from that vulnerability, the way the faculty designs the program is one of the ways to break down, again, those patterns, the mind patterning.
Yeah.
To then self-reflect. So, yeah, the accelerator model is one component of it, but it's a 9 to 10 month journey with a capstone, a project where the students work on a real client.
Amazing.
Yeah, and you actually have to find your own coachees as well. So there's a bit of an entrepreneurial spirit to it as well,
which is so important. So important, right? Because I know there's a lot of really great coaches, but they don't necessarily have that entrepreneurial piece. So they may have to get training somewhere else. So that's one of the things I've heard about Royal Roads is that it's really going to set you up at the end of it that you can sell your services, right? And at that executive coaching level, like you'll be prepared to go in and serve at that level.
Yes. And the group work, to add to that, adds a little bit of a dimension around themes, pulling out themes and doing a presentation for the client. So that's a very nice business component to walk away with in a real life experiential.
That's amazing. Well, I think if folks who are listening and they want to know more about Royal Roads, could they ping you and ask you for your guidance? Okay. That's great. I remember looking at Royal Roads myself too. And it was definitely on my list when I was looking at different coach training opportunities. And so it's just, like I said, it's always nice to hear how different models and curriculums are coming into play. I mean, we're all attempting to do similar things. There's a shared mission, I believe. There's a lot of shared values. And so one can go anywhere really to get that education. I think it's finding a curriculum, a faculty that resonates, that you feel like, yeah, this, I know, like if I get butterflies, the full body buzz, I'm like, yep, this is the one. I'm going to sign up for this.
Yeah, Christy, not to discount that, but that's a very important piece. It has to resonate with the learner. And
Really?
As I think back, one of the biggest takeaways for me was not only because it was business focused, but there were bonds that were made that still to this day I can tap into my cohort and connect with. So when I go back to the vulnerability piece, that's what they do really well, but also the bonding, the trust, the level of trust. So yeah, it's up to the learner though, if they really want to go down that route. But there are many other programs out there. And I was just curious, what made you go down your route? And I heard you say, yes, the butterflies or the feeling.
It was totally that. I went to, and this coming up on 2 decades ago. And I went to the CTI's website then. It was very different from how it is now, but it just resonated. The language. And so I put my credit card down for the whole thing. I just knew this was the path. And at that time I was involved in marketing. I worked actually at McDonald's restaurants. I might have told you that when we first met, and I was in a leadership position. And I first thought I was taking coach training to become a better people manager, which, as you know, it really helps in that role. It helps in any role of life, right? Become a better parent, a better partner, a better son, daughter, like sibling. But it was a full body yes. I put the credit card down. And then after my first course, and it was in person, obviously back then too, I said, I don't want to do marketing anymore. I don't want to sell cheeseburgers. I actually would like to train other managers inside organizations in this technology, because I think if more people had a coaching skill set, they could tap more into their values and their own mission, which would create more engaged work environments, healthier work environments. And we know, that's what the data says, is that when people are being coached inside the workplace, they find purpose and meaning, right? They find how they can connect their work to their own values, and they find ways to motivate, inspire, influence others in an authentic way to them. That's the value of bringing in coaches like yourself, or training managers in coaching skills so that they're deploying coaching across the board. I'm so passionate about this. That's why we have a whole season all around it, because I think your story about how you came into coaching, mine wasn't dissimilar. I was suffering. I was really having such a hard time. I was in over my head. I too had a toxic leader. I was in uncomfortable positions, and my gosh, had I had coaching at that time, that skill set in my toolkit, well, things would have been very different. And I would have set myself up with my manager to be led more effectively. I could have taken even more responsibility had I had this skill set back then.
Wow. Yes.
And it's one of the little tangent.
No, and it's, I applaud CTI. I work with a lot of CTI graduates, and the coaching model is amazing. In hindsight, I'm looking back, I'm like, did I miss something here? Because I wish I had done it too. And I got to say that the toolkit, yes, same experience. I was modeling what was seen as leadership in that organization, but that was not certainly not attuned to my values again. And I think coaching really helped to bring it all home, to be comfortable in my skin.
Well, let's talk more about that. How has the training, but then also the consistent implementation of it, being in service in this way, how is it allowing you to bring your full self to work?
That's a great question. Um, well, number one is I'm there in service for the client. So whatever's in the moment is where we go. And I like the organic flow, if you will, of where I am needed. And it's almost like the desire to, and I've used this previously, is in leadership, one is making, at least I was probably a servant leader if I characterize myself that way. I was in service to everyone, and I couldn't necessarily make myself available to everyone in the given day. It's a large team. So now I can fully bring my consciousness and my presence to, again, that moment, whatever it is that leader is dealing with. And I feel like I can tap in not only to my intuition, but also the spirituality of this. Like sometimes there is suffering. There's a lot of suffering in the workplace. And I feel as though it's sort of redemptive in a way for me, because I can be in service and reduce that suffering. I'm using that word very loosely. Please know that. I'm not saying it in a negative characterization, but what that individual may be suffering because they may not have a partner, a thought partner to speak to. It can be very lonely for them.
Very lonely. Yeah. Well, and I look back in the context of the ROI of coaching in the workplace, we're often talking about the past 4 years because of the unprecedented amount of crisis, chaos, and change that's just been consistently thrown at all of humanity. No one's been exempt. And then I think about folks in the workplace who are, I think, really being asked to bring more of their full self, because during the pandemic, everything got broken down. There was no separation between work life, home life. We had to kind of let go of those personas because you were in meetings inside people's kitchens, living rooms, meeting their partners, their kids, their roommates, their pets. And I believe we are architecting the new way of working. Like we're continuing to create this new way. Like we're in the goo. It's messy right now and no one's got it figured out. But what I have seen is that coaching has been a huge remedy, medicine to support people through these times inside the workplace. What have you witnessed over the past 4 years?
Wow. Yeah, I think, well, just to be clear, when I was in my career, it was pre-COVID, pre-pandemic. So the even concept of have you heard of the acronym VUCA?
Yes. Yeah, but say tell it out
sure,
for people.
Yeah, VUCA is increasingly that we're going to be increasingly in a volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous environment. That's what it stands for. I mean, it came from the military, and then they were assessing what they were going to go up against potentially, but it's transferred over into organizational development and it's bringing it back to the individual, though, as coaching as a tool. Someone sent me a post once and it said, change is inevitable, but transformation is a choice.
Ooh, say that again.
Change is inevitable, but transformation is a choice. And bringing it back to the client, to the leader, coaching has enabled my clients in their organizations to choose to transform. Okay. And I see it as coaching as a practical tool in the leader toolkit. So what I mean by that is one that enables resiliency in a chaotic time. So for me as a coach in organizations, I see, and I like to use the visual of the leader being the captain of the ship. And the captain has many factors, influencing them as they steer the ship, like weather, Those are events. They'll come and pass. Also, they have to take into account the destination and that what is the compass showing them? The compass could be other team members' feelings, opinions, emotions on the journey, especially during a VUCA or a change situation. It's constantly coming at them. So as a coach, to answer your question, Christy, it's about playing that confidant, that thought partner. The captain being alone requires someone outside of their current environment, someone outside of their environment to reorient to be a sounding board with.
And when they get that, what happens? What have you seen?
They get clarity, they get to momentum, they get to action. They realize they actually have control. It might be a small bit of control, but they can make a decision not only for themselves, but for the team and for the organization. So they're moving and controlling, and as much as they can, pulling, not pushing, but being pulled into the right direction.
So there's an ROI of coaching right there. You just explained that beautifully in a beautiful metaphor, a beautiful story. Like that's it right there. And in these times, because they're not lessening up. Let's just say they're not lessening up. And I do believe that people, there's a level of burnout because our nervous systems aren't really designed to have such constant chaos, crisis, and change. So then what needs to shift? Well, we need to actually build our capacity to hold more of the complexity. And what your story just demonstrated is how having a coach or having the coaching toolkit with a leader, both preferably, right? From our vantage point, they're getting both. That's going to grow their capacity to hold complexity and to navigate the VUCA times, to navigate constant crisis, chaos, and change, and to make our workplaces not just transactional, but relational, where the whole human is considered, because it needs to be in this day and age. But managers need to be trained in this and receiving this so that they can then replicate those behaviors.
100%, Christy. Replicating and coaching the whole self, bringing the whole self to the workplace. I'm seeing it shift also, of course, from performance driven, but also to what I would say wellness based application to support leaders in this transition.
What are you seeing in the wellness space? What's happening?
One of my clients told me about a platform that's been incorporated not as an employee assistance program, but as a sharing space where people from different organizations, different companies could tap into a 30-minute, 40-minute group session and can speak freely about some of the challenges that they're facing. And wellness for that particular client was a big need that as coaching, I was only able to serve a certain percentage of. This platform fell into more of the psychology and therapeutic realm. And we're seeing I would say, a higher level of acceptance that organizations are embracing that mindset, that need for a reset or an outlet.
So much so. One of the best things that came from the pandemic, I think, was that, okay, now we're going to talk about mental health, because guess what? We all have it. we all have brains, and they're being impacted, and we need to have conversations about how to be resilient and take care of them. And so, yeah, it's good to hear it from your perspective too, that you're seeing more of that. And we're seeing more system-wide programs, like you talked about, like platforms where there's accessibility to different types of services, which feels so important. Rahim, normally we're coming to the arc, but I want to keep going a little bit. And I know
Yeah, sure.
I told you a little bit longer anyhow. I guess that was a really fortunate mistake that I made, because I feel like we're just getting into it. And I wanted to ask you about how, wanted to ask you about your faith and what you're comfortable sharing, and how you've been able to include that in the work that you're doing, and maybe how coaching, liberated you to um, bring more of that in as well.
Thanks, Christy. This is a deeply sentimental topic for me, and I'm proud and grateful that you've asked, because part of the authenticity of being an Ismaili Muslim is I'm a Muslim. And when I say Ismaili, that is a subsect of the Islamic faith. And it's rooted in, there's in the greater world that we live in, Sunni and Shia. Okay. And so as an Ismaili, I fall within the Shia branch of Islam. And we are a very small subsect, but I would say the most esoteric in our belief system. And there is a similarity, a likeness to the Sufi practice. And although it's not Sufi, it is rooted, though we have a living Imam who descended from Prophet Muhammad. His ancestry comes from the Prophet. So I've felt a draw or a pull toward my meditative aspect of the faith, and being able to ground myself as well in service to my clients. And that grounding does not limit myself to my faith. It is actually rooted in non-duality, non-separation, but a common humanity, a common human element. And that's where holding space comes from for me as a coach.
Beautiful. Yeah. I feel like there's more on this, more for you to share.
Well, it's this, and there's no definition. There's a pluralistic world that we live in today, and these are just the masks that we're wearing, or the colors that appear.
Mm-hmm.
But beneath and inside each one of us, even as a leader or as a parent or whatever role we want to put to it, there's that common humanity, and that's inseparable between us all. No matter where we are, whether I'm in Canada, you're in the United States, Costa Rica, talking Middle East, those are geographical boundaries, but that humanity, that love that comes from the heart transcends all those boundaries. And that's exactly what, going back to alleviating suffering for me, is bringing back that heart, not just the mind, but bringing the heart into the workplace, that care.
And I hear that your faith is a vehicle to support you to be connected to your heart. Is that a fair?
Yes.
Yeah.
100%. I would not be here practicing a coach role if it weren't for my faith.
Mm. Wow.
Yeah. Spirituality is a big component. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. And I feel, going back to what we were saying before about navigating these times, that leaders tapping into, and when I say leaders, I mean humans. So humans tapping into a spiritual practice. And like you said, it's different for everybody, and that's okay. It's just about something that has you feel connected to something bigger than yourself, but then also brings you within yourself, that duality. And that's one of my high dreams for the workplaces, is that this increase around mental health, well-being, coaching, all of these modalities about helping people, that the spiritual element is also that light, that switch is turned on for folks. And so that people can share, this is my faith and this is how today it's serving me while we navigate this challenging topic, or celebrate, that we achieved what we went after. And, could we, I know I always risk sounding so Pollyanna about wanting to like live in a world where it's the common humanity. And then I have colleagues who will remind me, well, if you're in a war zone, you're not necessarily going to tap into that. So I'm just going to, some wisdom I got from one of my colleagues, which is the context that I'm coming from. I can say that, like, and it is, I have an advantage because I'm not in a war zone. I'm not, I'm not a marginalized person that's feeling this oppression. So I don't know, what do you have to say about, what do you have to riff off of that?
Yeah, I want to just contextualize that. I think there are many other forces at play that are now impacting, hitting not only leaders, individuals in so many different ways. Social media, the messaging, what we see, what we hear.
Yes.
And so for me, it comes down to being able to filter through all the noise and really recenter on, again, the heart.
Mm.
And the visuals tell you what's really happening. Yes, there are people suffering all over the world. And I will call on even Buddhism, for example, that in the Buddhist practice, well, Buddha's life, Gautama Buddha's life was around overcoming suffering. He was searching for a way to end that. But this plane of existence that we're on is suffering is inevitable. We can draw on our common humanity to alleviate that, to reduce it, and to see in these individual connections, you and I here talking about this, bringing it forward, may give some hope that there is still humanity, and we can create that in our environments. We can shape that in how we show up, not just in thought, but in action. And by leading others to see that commonality again, whether it's Abrahamic or whether it's Brahmin or whether it's caste or whether it's color. I mean, the layers go on, but at the end of the day, it's really about conquering those layers and seeing that truth.
Well said, my friend. That's some mic drop moments right there from Rahim. Boom. That was beautiful. Yeah, I felt that. Who's been a coach or like a leader that's inspired your journey, that has helped you get where you are today? And like, what are some of the qualities that made them, have such an influence on you?
Well, I know it's going to sound morbid, but they are no longer here with me, but they were I would say my older brothers. They played that older brotherly figure for me growing up. And two of my cousins, one when I was younger I saw how he treated others. He used to run a sociale, by the way. And,
Wow.
To riff on the McDonald's here, I used to work for him, and I was a busboy at the time, dishwasher. And so, I remember him interviewing a staff member. Well, this person was not the staff member yet, but he was applying for a job. And my cousin's name was Ick. And he said, get this guy a fresh meal. And he brought him a fresh plate of food, and they sat down there and they shared a meal together. And that was him. That was his care.
Wow.
And I saw that and I thought, wow, that wasn't part of the day job. He didn't have to do that.
Nope.
So the servant leadership also connected me from those moments as I was growing up, looking at and again, I needed a brotherly influence, I think. But secondly, in my other cousin who passed away, Husni, he was quite the charmer. He was a doctor, a physician in LA, and he used to carry like a deck of magic cards, cards in his pocket.
Yeah.
And with patients, he would do a few tricks here and there just to, I guess, what's the word, to help calm them down a bit.
Yeah. Yep.
He was quite the charmer. He did that with the ladies too, but I'm just saying that.
But he did it with his patients, and it worked like a charm, and with the ladies. Yeah.
Yeah. But there was this authentic side of who they were drawing on, no matter what their role was. One being a manager of the sociale, the other one being a doctor, in a hospital. They were still pulling and drawing on something within them that came from the heart.
Yeah. Wow. Well, they've clearly made an imprint on you, because that's been my experience of you today. And when we first met, like, you lead from your heart, and this conversation, it's kept going back to your heart, or the heart in general, in the different ways that we've been pursuing this topic. So it makes total sense that you had these role models who modeled leading with heart and with humanity. They started with the human. It wasn't like, let's just get into the brass tacks transactions, which I believe coaching really helps people understand. Like, let's start with relationship. Let's just check in. We'll still get all the work done. We'll still get to our results. Like, they're going to happen, but we're going to do it in relationship, with heart, within humanity, with humanity.
Yes. Yeah, Christy, there's obviously the quadrants. You have emotional, you have, innovative, analytical, and process. I mean, we still touch on that in a coaching conversation. They are goal-oriented 100%.
Yeah.
There's performance at the end.
Yeah.
But to remember that, I think, is something that I think as I was leading others, I forgot that piece. I let the mind and the ego of what I saw, of what was emulated for me at the time, obviously, take over.
Yeah, I did the same. Yeah. I mean, we're like recovering toxic leaders. And this is our way that we're paying it forward, by actually helping others step into their humanity, their heart, and of course, still the analytics and the innovation and holding the data, driving the results. I mean, it's all connected. What's your bringing this to conclusion? What is your final words of wisdom for folks who are really either considering, maybe they're in a position in their side their organization where they can bring in coach training for managers, where they can hire people like yourself to coach their leaders, or we could have trained coaches listening who want to do more work inside organizations. What's your hope, wisdom, final kind of prayer for that audience?
Wow, that's
a big question. I like to start it with a big one and end it with a big one.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate it. I appreciate it a lot. my hope is to follow that pull. Anytime something feels discomforting or there's a fear, to kind of go back to the comfortable zone.
Mm-hmm.
Listen to that feeling that doesn't require, and I use energy here, but doesn't require too much effort. Just hear and listen to what may be surfacing inside of you in that moment. Because it possibly may lead you to, like Christy, in your case, CTI, right? To me, Royal Roads, or to some other program. But also, what is symptomatically the remedy that's required in an organization too? If you're practicing as a coach, what are you seeing or observing that is symptomatic that probably as a coach you can diagnose and help? And I use that word, at the beginning, about dissonance.
Yes.
To dissolve that dissonance, because that may be preventing the organization from moving forward. I'll give you examples. Like, my hope is with some organizations, they've come to that realization that there were women that needed to be promoted like 10 years ago. And as a coach, well, my role honestly was to surface that up and thematically present that.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's the need for diverse groups to be heard. Or it might mean in another organization that I've worked with, where I had to say some uncomfortable truths to an executive team. But that's kind of what the teams were afraid of saying. So my hope is that, and my prayer, if you will, is that honesty can be surfaced and can be acted upon for those in the workplace that need a voice, that need some external third party to raise it up. So not to be afraid. Listen to that inner voice.
See, it's so good that you're in the role that you're in now, so that you can be that external voice to help those internal shifts take place, like really important shifts. So I just want to again acknowledge your heart and your humanity and your intuition that you listened to when you got that intuitive hit, like, oh, it's time, and I'm going to pursue this thing. So thank you for saying yes and coming to share your wisdom with us today.
Thank you, Christy. Absolutely. Anytime. And I appreciate you letting me share. There's a lot more stored inside that we didn't get to, but
We'll have to do a part 2.